The production of this video was made possible by donors to the Orchestration Online Patreon initiative. Please consider adding your support to the creation of free educational internet resources by visiting our Patreon page linked below. Little bit after breakfast on a Thursday morning here in New Zealand. It's Wednesday on the Western Hemisphere and Europe and Africa. So, hey, just really enjoying looking at this next batch of scores for the website entrance. And we're starting with a score by Travis. And Travis is a pro, and it really shows in this particular entry. So there isn't really a lot I can say like, oh, you should have done this, that, the other thing. There might be one or two little things that I will discuss, but mainly in a case like this, it's better to sort of like analyze what works, why, whether there is another choice that could possibly be made. Now notice that the music starts off very softly, and there are A2 trills here, whole step trills with the little sharp above in the flutes, and that's totally fine. That will work great because it's just a coloristic effect, and everything is soft enough to where that won't get completely buried until right about here. But it's better for it to continue on and to just disappear into the texture than it would be for Travis just to stop it cold, like say right here maybe on beat 3.5. So yeah, so that's totally fine. In some of my previous videos this morning and a couple days ago, I griped a bit about low flute being used to carry the melody, and here it's just textural, so it's fine. And also it's well balanced with pretty spare scoring around it. Just one oboe, bass clarinet, one bassoon, and strings. So that will be fine. And just little touches of harp. It's very cool, little glockenspiel rising with the melody. And we've got the flute and violins in unison. That always works good. Now notice how Travis has taken the time to mark the slurring on these bars so that it will work out, right? So down, up, and then here I would actually go up, right? If I were marking this as a violinist. Up, and then down, up, down, up, down, up. It's kind of nice to have like the longer downbeat on a down bow, right? And then that just really helps to reposition the bow into the next bar. Especially for something like this, right? Then you end up with a nice long fermata on a down bow losing energy, which is exactly where you want to be. So that's all scored nicely, and just very simple chordal strings below with some motion here in the lower winds. And I really especially like the little patterns in the A clarinets. Very cool. And then, just oboe harmonizing from below, and so on. That all works great, and a pad of horns in the back. Okay, so as as standard as that is, it's just very well crafted. And what's really great about it is that what follows in the winds is very, very nicely set up, right? And just like a little touch of pizzicato on the upbeat to the next bar. So yeah, so really nice first page. Then looking at the second page, continuing on with winds. Now here, just a little bugaboo, and that is that the melody note was actually, in this case, was going to be another written F sharp, and the A was actually a harmony note, right? Da 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 dum. Right, so we're missing the da dum. So we're missing a little element in there, Travis. So da 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 dum, da 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 da, harmonizing above with the A, right? So the A was actually a harmony note in there. So that's all right. But I would just say maybe something to rethink if you're going to polish this up and have somebody do a reading or a recording or whatever. And you know, here it feels a little too deliberate on this little sweep up, you know, kind of a little bit scrubbing, you know, rather than elegant, like an elegant lift, right? Just because everybody is doing it. There's so many instruments doing. I think you could get away with just a single line of flutes rather than a harmonized line. And maybe one of violin on the same pitch up there if you were to change the position of the violins at all. But other than that, it works fine. Nice little touch of a trill right in there, you know. Now, notice what Travis is doing here, folks, and that is using a tenuto staccato, right? So tenuto staccato and mezzo staccato are similar, but they're not really the same thing, right? So think of a tenuto staccato as being unga, right? So unga, 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 right? So it's not which would be mezzo staccato. It's so you really do feel the separation between the two pitches, or between the different pitches, because you want the staccato to be a tenuto, right? So you want a short separated note, but you want the separations to be there, to be like a full value of the separation rather than just an inflection, right? Which is what mezzo staccato is. It's inflected emphasis on the notes, right? But this is just it's more brutal in some ways than a mezzo staccato, but it's still really effective for all of that, right? And it works fine with any group of instruments, winds, brass, strings, right? So that's the difference there. So, and a nice contrast too between upper winds, horns, and strings, and then contrasting with kind of middle winds and glockenspiel. I feel that that's really effective. But one caution I would say here, Travis, is so that the resonance of the previous phrase doesn't kind of billow over or sort of cloud over into the next phrase, because you really want these to be separated, right? So I would say, like, maybe have a staccato at the end there, or a breath, or a diminuendo of some kind, right? So bum 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 bum, and then bum 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 bum. You could also do a pausa, right? But you just really want some separation here, so that, like, it's not, you know, dun 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 dun, oh, a bum bum bum. By the way, by the time the listener gets to hear, they realize that this actually started as its own unique phrase, but the resonance of the hall was sort of clouding over into that little new statement, right? So watch out for little touches like that. And this is nice, pizzicato contrasting with tenuto, staccato, bassoon. And that's great. So notice here's another craft touch for the audience to notice, and that is that the second bassoon is just taking some of this really simple duty right in here, as opposed to the first bassoon. And it's just, it's a nice way of giving them something to do on their own, A, and B, letting the first bassoonist just get ready for kind of nailing the intonation on this next chord. Or if they had a solo coming up, it would also be really perfect to just give the second bassoonist something else to do to sort of take the pressure off, or let the first bassoonist just focus on what they needed to do next. That was a major element. Now, bum, 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 bum. This is all really, really cool right here, this scoring. Definitely worth studying for other developing orchestrators. And that is like oboe enclosed by the flutes. That will work fine. Then horns below in 4-part harmony. And then we have the same basic chordal structure, an octave higher here in the strings, and then just the rest of the strings filling in below. So it's very, very simple, but what's nice is that the rest of the winds are not engaged here because the resonance of the horns is strong enough to just fill everything in, right? So there's really just no need. When you have a horn tone, you get not only the root tone, but you also get the body of the tone, which is an octave higher, a fifth, and an octave and a fifth higher, and then 2 octaves higher, right? So that really fills in all of the missing space in here to the point where the lower winds are kind of superfluous. Although you could have, if you had wanted to, the bassoons could have doubled this without any kind of loss of quality there. But you didn't need to put it in, and you didn't, and that's fine. Right, and then we just end with this really beautiful lower wind plus horns plus strings idea, and that's really nice. That's nicely scored, and just a little bit of wandering harp. So yeah, so really a great entry, and I wish I had more time to talk about it, but I really have to strictly keep to 10 minutes per entry, or else I'll run out of voice well before I get to the 146th entry at the end of this month. So anyhow, thanks again, Travis, for this great entry. And now let's take a look at the next one for this group. Hey there, James. This is really an excellent crossover style score. Just really sounds a lot like those very classy arrangements. Just a touch of Nelson Riddle here and there. And that is, I mean that in a very complimentary way as a crossover orchestrator myself. So yeah, just really enjoyed looking at your ideas here, and just some things really feel polished. Now, it's just that is so fun. That the introduction of the melody is very much like a singer, of a pop song, and the guitar strumming in the background and the rustling strings. Okay, that was all very cool. So the string tremolo sound was great in your sound set, but some of the other sounds were, I just feel you could do a lot better. Like the celesta sound really sounded like xylophone, frankly, and the harp sounded like a piano. So you might want to look into Note Performer, which is what a lot of entries are using In fact, Note Performer started as a Sibelius sound set using synthesis along with sampled style waveforms, and it has soon sort of moved over to Dorico. I'm not sure if Finale is using it now, but it's pretty ubiquitous. So, and it's very cheap. It's like, I think it's like $130 or something. And yeah, I mean, I don't love everything about it, but it is, it's got a way better celesta sound and harp sound. And I think the wind chime sound is not too bad either. I think I've used it a couple of times. So I might be wrong about that, but yeah. So you've got like suspended cymbals, little touch of Glock. The sleigh bells were kind of fun. I didn't quite hear the wind chimes. Now, sadly, I have to break things off at bar 20 because that's as far as we can go for these website entries. But just to let everybody know that James continued on, as you can see, and I think scored the entire piece. So yeah, and did a great job with it too. So James, you might want to post your own video that along those lines if you want people to hear it, if you haven't done that already. Okay, so I talked a little bit about the scoring of the beginning. That's all pretty effective. I would say don't limit yourself to guitar. If you're serious about this arrangement and you want an orchestra to play it, really just put your guitar stuff onto the harp, because you cannot know that a guitarist is going to be available, especially one with like a semi-acoustic or acoustic guitar plugged into an amp that is the right kind of amp to play along with an orchestra, right? You don't know that player will be available unless you yourself are that player, So, anyhow, yeah, I mean, I feel that the introduction is great, and then going on here, we've got ba da 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 dum ba da da dum. Once again, the melody note is a repeat of the note before, so in this case, written F, and the A is actually a harmony note. And so there's no that, like, you put the resolution here on the horns. Now, just to talk a little bit about your horn scoring here, you've got horn in F1 and 2, and really what you mean is four horns in F, right? And the standard way of scoring horns for concert music is to have interlocking harmony, like what you have right in here. So see, like right here, you got it great. But here, this should be like a D6th, and this should be a C4th, right? So the second player should be playing a D, and the third player should be playing the F, right? So that the harmony interlocks in the players. You just get way better harmony that way. Okay, and then this is all fine the way that the strings are scored. Bump, 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 bum, with the little shaking bells. Now, it's a little too soft here, I think, to go down to pianissimo. I mean, that's something that works on piano, but not necessarily for the orchestra. So I've commented on a couple of other scores about the risks of having a really strong or a stronger phrase coming right before a very, very delicate phrase. Is that just that the reverb of the hall itself will wipe out the first beat or two of the response, right? So you just really have to think about where things are going. Like here you've got this diminuendo. That is really going to help. But you don't have it in your strings, right? So by the time you get to here, this should be piano or pianissimo. It should be the same volume as this phrase to follow, or else it just really kind of blots out. Now, it doesn't matter with the harp, because the harp is really soft. You always have to mark the harp's dynamics up a little bit, right? So right here, for instance, this could be P, and that could be a pianissimo. Or this could be mezzo piano, and this could be piano, right? But I would say just don't go so soft. Sleigh bells are actually fairly soft instruments. So, this is good. Mezzo piano versus mezzo forte in the foreground. That's fine. But watch out for for markings like this: mezzo piano, diminuendo, followed by mezzo forte. That's the kind of stuff that confuses the players. Like you would, it's you almost need to write subito right in here, right, just to let the player know that like you haven't forgotten something. You didn't forget to mark a forte here or something, right? Okay. All right, and then bum 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 bum. We get to our last little phrase, and here in particular, you could just really like hear that celesta sounded like a bit like a xylophone, just kind of crude. So here's where you really want, like, if you're submitting this mock-up to a recording artist, right? You want, or to like a manager or somebody else like that, just somebody who cannot look at your score and know what you mean, like me, but somebody who just needs to have an audio impression. You really want a better celesta sound. I mean, I have actually sat down at a piano and played an overture for a conductor. Mark, if you're out there, Mark Today, who I work with a lot. And, based on that overture, he sort of like gave me the nod to write one for this larger piece that we were doing, this larger concert. It was like a 1 hour concert dedicated to this longer piece that I'd scored, and he'd conducted several times. So I just said, look, we should have an overture, and here's how it should sound. And I played about 2 minutes out of the 3, and he said, yeah, sounds fine to me. So that's one situation where like the conductor can sort of hear, like, and imagine that the orchestra around your basic ideas, but you can't count on that for your clients. All right, so sorry to spiel on about that. And this was kind of interesting. So you did your harmony, you did your 4-part harmony in octaves. So I thought that was kind of a fun idea. Divisi, of course. I mean, that will kind of work, just so long as everybody is really listening to each other. Probably a more secure intonation would be just to stack everybody, just to have thirds in all the parts walking downhill. But it's fine, and then just like ending here tranquilly with strings all by themselves. It's a good setup to what happens next, but of course, I promised myself I was not going to go further than that. So I would just say, that's my comments on this. I think you have got some chops there as a crossover arranger, James, and I think also just concert orchestration. You definitely later on in as going on into the next pages, you do show some real talent for that too. So yeah. So I mean, really nice entry and a good follow up for the score that we just had a look at, because there were also some influences of crossover in that as well. So just a really great start to this video so far. Now let's have a listen to the third entry for this group of scores. A very intriguing score there, Demetrio. There are a few things to talk about. I think maybe a few wrong notes on that last page, but we'll discuss that as we get there. So starting off with this first page, I like the fact that you are using A clarinets, and I really love the fact that you start off with a solo right there. Just very simple scoring, and a single harp note, which is going to sound fine. I would say actually mark this up to mezzo piano or piano, and then you'll have the right balance there. Because look, you've already got pizzicato here in the cellos, so the harp is going to be really drowned out unless it is louder, right? Like I would almost even say mezzo piano with a tenuto mark over it, and then you will have something of a balance with the cellos. But cello pizzicato is very potent. Even at pianissimo, it is going to cut through pretty strongly. Then really simple orchestra here, really nice. Just single upper winds, and then 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, 2 horns, and a little bit of percussion, harp, and strings. Really great. And just a little bit of surging here in your chordal accompaniment. Now, then just like, and then also nuanced phrases in your winds. And this is very cool. We've got the oboe overlapping on this single note. And then here you have like an overlap over 2 notes. And I think you could have just overlapped right here. I mean, I see what you're doing here. You don't want to overlap on a weak note, right? You want the flute to come in a place where it is like you already have the continuity of the phrase and then the oboe. But like really what you need, if you want to pull this off, you've got to do hairpins. Like you have to have, I would say, piano crescendo and then diminuendo here, right? So I think that would work a little bit better so that the phrase was handed off more seamlessly, because like that's obviously what you want, is a seamless handoff of the phrase. Okay. But otherwise that works really, really nicely, ending up on that high F sharp on a pianissimo. That's about as high as you would want to go with that marking. Maybe a G could be a true pianissimo, even an A with sort of, but like then it just really gets to be very big up there. Okay, but yeah, so here you're saying no arpeggiando and then arpeggiando at the end. That's great. Okay. Now, while all this is going on, of course, you're doubling from below. You're doubling at pitch with the first violins, and then an octave below with the violas. And this is nice. These little fingered tremolos with the seconds taking over seamlessly from the violas. Like there's no need for them to overlap. It'll just all fit together. Here I would say you might want to look at the bowing strategy of Travis. Was it Travis or was it Bruno? It's all sort of starting to blur together, but like of an entry or two ago, where it is down bow covered by a single slur, and then up bow without a slur, right? So it just is better, it's just easier to work out the bowings. And try not to do things like this, where you've got a slur covering 3 notes, and then a downbeat or a down bow, and then a slur covering all the notes going into that. It's really better for the players to bow together, okay? Just for a nicer sound. Now, like here, you're just sort of thinking about the tremolo ending here very smoothly, but it will end smoothly even on a different bow. So it's okay to leave the tie going across here, but really these should all have the same bowing. Okay. But other than that, just very nice minimalistic scoring of lower winds and horns. And nicely done too. Just the which pitches were given to which instruments. I thought that was all very well done. Okay, and then just like a little tish here with the suspended cymbal. Now turning the page, we've got this bum da 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 bum da da da. Once again, the melody note is actually right here. Ba da 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 da. Right? It's not da 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 dum dim. That was actually a separate voice in the original score, so it's actually a harmony note from above. It's like our ears are just fooled into thinking that everything that any pitch that is higher is the melody. But if you actually listen to Sophia and other pianists play this, they keep the emphasis on the middle pitch, which is the melody, right? The D sharp, not the F sharp. Okay, and this is nice, just nice well worked out scoring. A little bit of harp supporting the basses down here. I would say if you go to pizzicato here in the basses, you do not need the harp at all because nobody's going to hear that. Yeah, this all works great. Bum 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 bum, and then echoed by dun 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 dun. Now notice here, everybody, the diminuendo before the bar line. So that means that that gives the pianissimo the chance to stand alone, right? That it's just it's just the sense of overlap, right? You want subtle phrases like this, this mezzo staccato to really, like, the first note of this bar, you want it to not be encumbered by anything before it, right? So like Demetrio, you could have actually made this piano right in here, right? And you could have added some rests just to really make sure that the two didn't smash into each other. Okay, but still fine. And really good dynamic contrast as well. There is less tiptoeing, I've got to say, if you just slur it like this, da bum, as opposed to da 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 da, or But the contrast in articulation is also nice. Bum 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 bum. Now here, I feel this is really deliberate. It's just like this real big sweep up to something, just like really getting excited. And is this next page really worthy of such excitement? Bum 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 bum. Okay, well, let's so just watch out, everybody. I'm seeing a lot of sweeps up to notes, and there were a few where the sweeps were used a little too often for my taste. It's just taste, though. I'm not going to try to say that I'm the arbiter of that. Yes, I go around biting the letter R. Okay, so flutes and firsts, divisi. Yeah, this all works pretty good. Nice apportionment, nice voicing of this chord. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that all works fine. I like that. And a little touch of glockenspiel on top. So yeah, so this is great, except that the only problem here is just that those are the wrong notes. So I mean, if you wanted to come up with a different harmony there, that's great. I'm not sure that it works for me, but in terms of the logic that Lili was using to get from point A to point B, or actually from point C to point D, if you want to think about it that way. But really, it could be just a misinterpretation of the harmony while you were transcribing things, and then you just kind of went on and didn't think about it after that, or maybe wanted to do something different with the harmony. I can't tell, but yeah. So those should be F. That should be F sharp on top, and I could go through the harmony, but there's just not enough time. But yeah. But in terms of the scoring, it's fine. That this is actually great the way that you've got this. Like, okay, so notice this, folks. So 4-part harmony, walking downhill, divided between the two string groups, the two violin groups, and it's just so much easier. If they were actually going to play double stops, it's easier for them to just play sixths, because sixths are like one of the easiest of the double stops. So this did not actually even have to be divisi, right? And then when you get here to this this closer harmony right in here, it's a little bit it's actually better to go divisi, I feel. And it's fine for it all to be divisi, but just saying, sixths and thirds, that's all pretty simple to play non-divisi, to play double stops. But yeah, that would be a great way, if this were non-divisi, that would actually be a great way to divide up the harmony, because of the sixth, it's just so easy to play. All right, So and then the rest of this, yeah, that's all fine. Just really well done. There's a bit of a gap in here, but it's filled in by the horns pretty nicely. So yeah, so really no complaints. And just a little bit of overlap here. Resolution note here at the end with the middle strings, and just a little bit of suspended cymbal. So yeah, so really, no problems there at all, Demetrio. Just really enjoyed the score, but just like watch out for the harmony on that. Maybe next time transcribing, yeah, just have a listen to compare the two different versions before you score it out. Okay, so yeah, just really great score. Just really, I'm always impressed to see your stuff. And thanks so much for entering it into the challenge. So on to the next entry for this group. And yet another really strong entry. This one from Arne, and just really fun stuff in here. Just I really enjoyed it a lot. Leave this to the players. This whole, I mean, they will. It's kind of strange to go slur mark with two different bowings. Better just to say legato, okay? And they will connect everything really beautifully for you, and they will make the decision about how to bow this. All right. So if you really want these connected with a legato bowing, they can do this all in one bow, and it's a very, very simple thing. There's no need to kind of overdo it in terms of the suggestions of how to bow it. Okay. There was just a very amusing troll that I had to delete on Orchestration Online just now. Not sure if it was a troll or a very sincere person, but anyhow, they had a permanent timeout for me, so that's making me giggle. All right, so let's just focus on this piece right here. I don't really see any big problems in terms of the notation or the scoring or the approach or anything like that. I know I've been sort of telling people not to broadcast too much, but this one little rip up here I think is fine. Okay. All right, so let's talk about just the scoring itself. English horn, really, really cool way to start. Trading off to oboe, as we've seen in a couple other entries, and then overlapping and separating right in here, similar to the last entry, and just continuing on, nicely harmonized and so on. Okay, so that's all really, really cool. What's neat here is just how layers are added in the brass, including this high piano G, which is just about as high as you would want to score piano on trumpet, and will still stick out a bit more than you think. All right, and then of course doubling by the strings, and that all works fine. That's all good. Solo cello, that's very, very fun. Yeah, and then a lot of icing, a lot of frosting happening there from the other instruments, glockenspiel, harp, and so on. Okay, so it's really delightful, very warm, not too different from what we've seen before, but still quite individual approach, and it really does feel like this person has got their own voice, right? And then here we have this come in here, and that really puts the puts the individual mark on here. Just having those high G's, right? The same G's that we heard here. Having this high G just sort of sit there, and it's also in the oboes and flutes, but it has this nice little kind of upper pedal tone against the music, and that is just such a cool idea. I think that's really an individual touch. Everything else scored very nicely. Once again, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. Adding the bowing, telling the bowing. Just I mean, if you do have a valid reason for doing it, just mark it the first time, and then let the players decide from that point on. All right. All right. Then like good support. You've got your double basses, pizzicato, a little touch from harp, bassoons, and so on. Nice variation in that it doesn't become stodgy or predictable. Bum 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 bum. You got it, my friend. It is not going up a third. In this case, G. To follow the melody. We just have that melody note. That harmony note here in the second violins. That is awesome. You win the no prize for today. But supported by trumpet, so that will the weight of the line will continue on. So that was nice. If that was calculated, then congratulations. That was really, really great. Great way to deal with that. Because we still have got so much weight on the G above, right? So that doesn't really need to be overemphasized anyways in the melody, right? And then this gives us that support that we need. All right, leading on to bump, 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 bum, which here was stopped horns. Sounds nice and squashed, along with the second. Notice the second on muted trumpet. So it doesn't really matter that there isn't time to get together a mute between this note and that note because it's a different instrument. So that all works really, really great. Nice kind of squashed sounds against this pizzicato here. Pluck, pluck. And notice that, since it's pizzicato, a little bit of bassoon staccato, which I would, by the way, mark mezzo piano diminuendo. Lots of rests, the hairpins, the pizzicato, and then right here, this contrast works beautifully. The phrases don't smash together. There is plenty of room for the listener to hear the individuality of the upper winds, or not upper winds, the clarinets and flutes playing together with secco harp. So how do you do this on harp? But basically it's just the harpist is using their palm to immediately damp the strings after they pluck them. All right, so they'll give you the value of an eighth note and then immediately stop it on the and. So and, right? So they really are stopping the sound as they go. All right, and then this nice little glissando, like I said before, just maybe one is okay, or maybe one that isn't too deliberately set up, right? We don't want to just constantly. It's sort of like a finger pointing at something, right? Have you ever seen those cartoons or artwork on advertisements where there's a big finger pointing at something, or a big splash mark around something, right? It's sort of emphasizing our journey towards something. Okay, so we just have to be careful how we do that. Now here I would say you don't need fortissimo on this. Just forte is fine, or even mezzo forte. It's the harp that needs to be fortissimo. Okay, and then after that we get bum, 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 and this is nicely done. Which is, once again, very, very cool. However, I do want to point something out, and that is, in the mock-up, you are sort of hearing what it is going to sound like. So here, Arne is going for a blended sound of strings in the foreground with the brass in the background, right? So that gives it a really warm, edgy sound. And that is what you hear in the mock-up, and you'll hear a better version of that in real life. Okay, but you just have to, it is not the most pleasant sound in the world. It's not the same thing. It's not that beautiful, colorful, kind of realer than real quality that you get when winds do the same thing. When you have wind instruments playing behind strings, right? That is a different quality. So when you've got, especially with trumpets on top, right, just really brightening the first violins, right? You will get that. You will just really get a kind of a coarser, brighter. It's almost like a flat. It's like flat white paint on a wall, right? It just is just almost. So I'm just saying, like, just you listen to what that lesson is trying to tell you, okay? And then of course, like at the end, you've got clarinets, bassoons, and horn behind the strings, and you can immediately hear the difference. That much warmer, less edgy sound, and then of course like some frosting on top, which works great. So my estimation of this score is just I really loved it. I liked all of the different choices, and I liked all of the personal touches. I did like, speaking of trumpet and violin together, I did like the doubling here of these instruments, and I like the fact that you balance things as much as you could, right? So piano in both instruments, which will work fine, and then forte in the middle of this crescendo as opposed to mezzo forte here. And then the same thing, piano to mezzo forte, piano to forte. So those are the correct ways to deal with some of the imbalances. And then, of course, mezzo forte, short notes, plus forte pizzicato in the strings, and mezzo piano behind the forte. So those are all really, that's all just really a nice attempt to balance things. If anything, I would say that you could just mark your harp up a bit, right? So piano secco, I would actually say mezzo forte here, right? So mezzo forte against the staccato of the winds. And then the harp will balance really nicely. Same thing right here, like you've swept up to a forte here, and then I would just sort of stay to mezzo forte here so you can hear these different little elements, right? And glockenspiel is also not very loud either, right? So this could actually be possibly mezzo piano or even mezzo forte, depending on, I mean, you're tailing off here to pianissimo, but still, I have my doubts. But you don't want to overdo it either, do you? So just watch out for all of those elements. And it was very cool to have glockenspiel come here at the end, like as part of the melody line, an octave higher, or two, actually. So so just really enjoyed this. Very, very, very nice, and just really in keeping with what we heard before. It just really got me excited. So on to our fifth entry for this group of Orchestration Challenge entrants. Okay, Jack. So, I think you have to make some decisions here about how much of certain things that certain special effects and ideas and certain harmonic qualities you want in this score, right? And like, I don't think you can have all the candy all the time, all right? Because you have some great ideas in here, really delicious stuff, but I think that there's just a little too much all the time, right? So, like, for instance, one of the things I would say is that just is so much glockenspiel throughout this entire thing. And like the tubular bells are fantastic, but then they kind of tend to get used a little too much finally. And then right in here, as you can probably hear in the mock-up, this is something that is also going to be true in real life, and that is that just because of the acoustic nature of the tubular bell sound, it just kind of gets eaten up. Like the resonance of the tubular bell just gets devoured by everything around it. So, that's one of the things where like somebody will write a big orchestral unison with the tubular bell playing along with everybody else, and it'll disappear. However, if they're playing a big orchestral unison and the tubular bells are playing opposite what is going on in the music, then you can suddenly hear them really, really well. All right, so yeah, and I think another one too is like tam tam. Like, I mean, how much tam tam can you have here? Like right here at the beginning, that is a wonderful effect, and then you allow it to sort of collapse under the rest of the music. And that is a really great decision to make, you know. But then just that one stroke right here just feels like too much. All right. Okay, so those were my critiques just in terms of like me as an arranger kind of giving you some feedback about like proportion, right? So proportion is always a really strong part of the whole scoring job. And you just have to watch out, right? Of like okay, the last thing I was going to talk about was this G here in the horn, right? And it just sticks out. Sorry, my eyes are not what they used to be. This E, sorry. This E just sort of sits there, and is just really audible against everything else going on in the music. So yeah, and you know, and also this E above it, right? This doubling E in the trombone, right? It just really just kind of, it goes on a little too long, I feel. Like there's nothing wrong with stating that again, but like maybe in a progressive texture, right? So that the ear doesn't just get stuck on that note. Okay, so now let's talk about the actual orchestration itself, which I thought was really great. I just really enjoyed hearing yet another take on this. We've got score in C here, right? So it's English horn plus C trumpet, and that's going to work fine. Those are compatible timbres. You know, with a mute especially is very helpful. And as things move along here, they get taken over by the flutes. I'm not sure how many you intended here. Like 2 flutes, but is this 2 flutes, or is it like 1 flute? Then adding this on later. So yeah, so make sure you tell us who is playing what at any given time. Now it doesn't really matter for the other instruments because it's you're either using 2 at once or they're single winds like the piccolo, right? But then later on, we kind of need to know. So like you do tell me here, like 2, but you should have said what was going on here, right? So, but okay, do not say divisi. Okay, divisi is a string marking. Okay, now there is an exception for winds, and that is if you're writing band music. When you have like maybe 3 or 6 clarinet players on one staff, then you may use the word divisi. But otherwise, in concert music, divisi is solely the property of the strings. Do not use divisi, right? Because divisi is simply a term telling the string players that they can use more than they can use more players on different pitches, right? Rather than 2 pitches being played by the same player. All right, but I can see that this is probably just a copy and paste error, right? But I just want to be sure, right? Because right before there was A2, and then here, A2, that's not something that you would want to say for your cellos, right? So that's like more of a wind thing, right? So we've got sort of have the reversal thing going on right here, right? So, all right, okay, but let's not get stuck with that. Let's go back and talk about the scoring a little bit more. So, you know, the melodic treatment is okay. You know, we got the trumpets basically playing in unison below. We got they're sort of doubling the second violins. The first violin's coming in and starting to thicken the line as it goes up to the flutes and piccolo. Now, this piccolo is probably like just totally wasted. I mean, you're adding a little bit of weight to that line, but this range of the piccolo is so gentle and rather just rather soft and subtle that it really kind of doesn't add a whole lot to the texture. So better just to completely leave it out and have the piccolo player completely ready. Like maybe the piccolo player could play this last F sharp and then just launch into this as a solo, right? Okay, the harp writing is fine. Celesta writing, that's all good. That will work fine. And then but the thing about this is that you have celesta and glockenspiel working together. I would say pick one, leave out the other, because the way that you got it scored, you're going to have octaves, right? So that is okay, I guess, because the glockenspiel has a 2-octave transposition. So I guess if you just want that octave there, but it's actually probably easier just to play it on celesta as octaves, because the celesta really is not that strong of an instrument. You know what I mean? It doesn't really, like, once everybody gets to forte here, the celesta is going to disappear. The glockenspiel will still be in the action, not as much as it could be, but it will still be there. I really like the use of the tubular bells at the beginning. That's great. But notice how they sort of get buried as the music goes on. So they're nice and audible right here, but then playing notes that are part of the harmony with the rest of the music, and they just disappear, right? Okay. And then this harmonic filling in is nice. No big problems there. Nothing too far out of range or anything else, right? It's just that one E that you're sort of sitting on there that just starts to kind of grate a little bit, I think, or just it's an idea that's cool, with that note sticking out, but then after a while, it sort of subtracts from the effectiveness of the music towards the end. Let's put it that way. All right, so now going on, we've got bum ba ba bum 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 ba da bum. I'm going to stop mentioning now that is not a melody note but a harmony note. See, because where's the da da? It's right here in the trumpet, right? Ba da 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 is the melody. But yeah, it's fine. So here you've got this cool idea, which is a 2-octave melody between piccolo and clarinet, and that really sounds Stravinskyan. It's kind of a nice Stravinsky touch here, And then just this simple doubling of lower strings and lower winds, that's very effective. And then we go to bum 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 bum. I really do like the overlapping here of the horns, the trumpets, I meant to say. Coming in, and that is a good way to introduce that color into the music, right? But once again, mezzo piano, diminuendo, mezzo forte, subito, right? Because you don't want the player to think, well, okay, I actually meant this to be forte, right? This is the kind of thing that gets the hands raised at a rehearsal. But though, it's either the player will assume what you mean is mezzo forte subito, or they'll raise their hand and say, do you mean mezzo forte subito after the diminuendo there? They just want to make sure, because from their perspective, this could be forte, diminuendo to mezzo forte, and it got marked wrong, right? Or that maybe this was intended to be piano and it got marked wrong. So just try to be clearer when you have that kind of thing. And then bum 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 bum. I know my singing is atrocious. The way that I'm sitting in front of the screen, I have no support for my diaphragm as I'm sort of humming along or singing along. So this is nice. It's the same scoring idea twice, right? But just different dynamic level. I think that's also cool, because we've heard so many other different ways of the contrast between timbres, between thickness of texture, between percussiveness versus legato, all these other kinds of things. But here it's just the same exact scoring but softer, right? So that's also a valid thing. Now, massive bum 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 bum. All right, so this makes me happy because you put the F sharp in the first violins, right? The top of the melody in the first violins. However, I would say I think you could have easily had octaves here so that you'd have some doubling for the first flute, because right now this is like really top heavy in terms of the winds, right? So you've got the strings in the middle, so you have that nice stronger string feel to it, but the strings are going to have to compete with all of this really thick heavy stuff going on with all the brass. Like you've got all the brass and you've got all the winds playing, right? So like it's almost pointless for the strings to do any harmony there. They might be better off just playing, like, just leave everything the way it is, but just have the strings play octaves, right? And then that way the strings double the instruments that are playing the F sharps and then walking down from there in the music. And then the trick of all tricks is that it sounds like the strings are playing harmony on the harmony notes in between those F sharps, right? Wahaha. So, I mean, that's the oldest trick in the book. That's like goes back to Wagner and actually even back to Weber, I think. But it's something that you could also be thinking about, like, just right in here you get sort of a thicker texture. It like pays off by the time you get to the end here, right? But then you lack string color in the upper notes, and you have this sort of piping sound of the piccolo going on. Right, so there's another reason why I just think like you could have a little. That's another element I think you could have less of. Right. Anyhow, but other than that, like I know I'm sort of picking this score apart a lot, but there's a lot of good stuff in here. Do not get me wrong at all. Just really enjoyed this, Jack, and I'm so glad that you entered it, and it really has a place amongst all of these other orchestrations here. So thanks so much for submitting it. Now, for our very last entry to this group of entries to the Orchestration Challenge, letter C, coming right up. So it was really great to get this entry from Richard, who is a professional contrabassoon player. And you notice that his contrabassoon scoring is pretty fearless. Yeah, he pretty much knows what he's doing, and has written some great parts. And I really wish I could show you the entire score for this piece. It's scored, as you can see, for kind of a wind band or a sort of a wind serenade sort of band. Just like piccolo, flute, oboe, English horn, clarinet, bass clarinet, bassoon, and contrabassoon. So we've got our wind octet plus 4 horns below. And it's just really nice wind writing. Really pleasant, and you can see kind of how a wind player thinks when you are looking at this score. Just really great. So I could point out some very cool, effective things about it. There are a couple of things I would probably do a little differently. Like, for instance, I would probably score the bass clarinet in the key of D flat rather than C sharp, right in here, just to kind of keep it a little simpler to read. But then again, there are going to be double flats that will occur because of the original key of B trending natural, right? So the bass clarinet, following certain harmonic changes in this, will need to have double flats as opposed to naturals in the scheme of things. But I mean, it's really not like the bass clarinet part is all that difficult, so it doesn't really matter that much. So we're starting off with bum 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 bum, the oboe, probably not necessary to have like flute 1 and oboe 1, just say flute and oboe, unless this was part of a score intended for a set ensemble that had more players in it. But yeah, this might... I'm not sure, but I think this is a Dorico score. I don't really know that much about Dorico, but I'm kind of wondering whether or not that has something to do with the way the score is sort of laid out. I'm cutting off some parts that can sort of continue on and then say sort of tacit in front of the instruments that aren't being used for the rest of the arrangement. So, but anyhow, back to the melody. So, here we see Richard's conception here of the melody as just like one unfolding constant line that dovetails over to the flute. And notice on the dovetailing, the oboe continues on, right? So the flute is going to appear to emerge from that dovetailing. And notice the little harmony from above here, right? Or from the inside, I should say. Of the piccolo is going to be playing the E right under this oboe note right here, and then the G right under here, right? But then it's going to continue on, just continuing to be like an inner voice. G sharp to F sharp. I should be adding sharp to this. G sharp to F sharp. And then that's the same F sharp here, right? So the two will seem to merge together. It's really a really nice effect of that inner voice. I'd just say Richard has also thought out things very nicely in terms contrapuntally, which I think that Lily Boulanger would really appreciate. But we will get to more of that. So in terms of like the overall effectiveness of the scoring, I think that Richard has kept it really simple here. So everything is just basically scored piano, right? With a few little nuances here and there. And that allows the colors of the instruments and the voicing as assigned by the arranger to do all the work, right? It doesn't need to be really fiddly. There doesn't need to be big surges in the middle and everything else. And this way the melody can kind of take over. I would probably mark something right in here to kind of guide the oboist to the trade-off with the flute right in there, right? You could actually say like crescendo to forte dolce and then backing off to this E, which will pick up perfectly in sync with the flute right there, rather than, so the flute will really feel like it's blending and then emerging out of the oboe rather than just adding on, right? Say the oboist just interpreted this to be like going up to mezzo piano or just something nebulous, and then backed off down here to piano again, and then the flute came out of it just too strong, right? Then you would lose that blend. That's a thought, right? But that's just me being a perfectionist. On the next page, we see a little bit more action here. I really love the way that the bass clarinet is being used here as the bass for most of this piece, with bassoon and contrabassoon working together as partners, really. It's just really nice. It's just really lovely scoring. And then oboe family members working together, lower piccolo and flute. This will work fine in this context without worrying about brass interfering or strings absorbing the sounds. Then it's possible to score lower on flute and piccolo and still have an effective sound. And you get one of the brass rings that I'm passing out today for ba-da-da-da-dum, and considering the harmony note to be this F sharp, which is going to sound right there. So that's actually nicely done, because that's that low note on piccolo. We will be able to hear it quite well, but it won't interfere with the timbre of the oboe, right? Because it's a sort of in a weaker register. So that all works great. And then all four horns, bum, 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 bum. Yeah, see, that's just really, really nice in there, the way that that's all scored. So notice, I've been griping about this before, people scoring mezzo staccato ending with an accent with a slur over all of them, right? So notice how a professional wind player thinks of this, right? They've got the mezzo staccato with the slur over the staccato bars, and then the accent as a separate articulation starting with a new, like with a new tonguing, right? Rather than just carelessly putting the slur over all of those, right? Because it really does mean something. Like the slurred staccato, the mezzo staccato really is its own idea, right? It's its own, it's like staccato that is done with abdominal pressure, right? Rather than cutting the notes off or making them short or whatever, right? It's just like, it's this delicate push. Okay, not to get into it too much. You guys should already know that, right? Okay, and then we have the same idea again, but with English horn on top, and then the clarinet, bassoon, horn, all added together, sort of echoing. About the only thing that I would add to this is something that you probably heard before, Richard, and that is just a sort of give maybe just a little bit of a breath mark here, or or maybe diminuendo, or some other thing that really allows the downbeat of this bar to be completely pure and like unencumbered by any resonance from the previous bar, so that you just really, that this really stands on its own in stark contrast without any sludge hanging over. Now, this is really lovely. Bum, 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 bum is the contrary motion that's in here. And I know this is a really basic thing that is going on here, but it still is just a lovely touch. And I think that it's something that works really, really well for the player, right? To be, so that they're not just all playing parallel right in there. That's a great idea. Something I wish I'd thought of. Probably wouldn't have worked with the approach that I ended up using. But yeah, but it's cool to have just a little bit of contrary motion there, just for the relief too of the players inside, doing something new and different. But I mean, it's not something that really stands out as you hear it, though, right? It's just a functional thing that's very cool. And it's also really cool the way that it is scored, that the instruments that are walking up are some of the ones that remain in action as the other ones cut off, right? So that's another cool thing. Now, the thing about it, though, is that this flute is really not going to be heard very much, but it is still good enough to add it in this context of, a wind sextet plus two horns, the kind of scoring that is just right there. So that will work fine. And notice that it's also been marked down to piano, which maintains through, while the other instruments diminuendo. And this will be also kind of a nice subtle touch right in there too. So I really like the way that is scored, and I like the way that the contrabassoon hangs on right there. That's really, really nice. Like whoever is playing the lowest note in a woodwind band kind of arrangement like this, like they have got not really necessarily some power, but they've got some responsibility, right? They have to help everybody else stay in tune because they are like that bottom note. So they really have got to have a great ear, and they've got to really be aware of what everybody else is doing on top of that note that they're playing. So I just have so much respect for bass players, contrabassoonists, bassoonists, bass clarinet players, tuba players, people who are really holding down that, the fundamental note of a chord, and everybody above them. It's like, it can be hair-raising, like the opening of Mendelssohn's overture to A Midsummer Night's Dream. There's this place where the second horn player just jumps down and plays, I think, a low E, and it that is like that is the stage fright moment for a low horn player, because they had better really nail that note. So you might hear people just working and working and working and working on that part, which sounds like nonsense without the other instruments around it. But then they don't get a chance to really practice unless they're like maybe in a youth orchestra or they do a sectional or something like that. They don't really get a chance to practice that intonation. So they just, like sometimes I will hear a certain low horn player of my acquaintance practicing along to a recording for certain things like that, just to really kind of hear what the shape of the note is going to be like in their mouth, right? And then how that sounds along to the other instruments. Anyways, there's a lot to it, and it's just really great to get a score from somebody who is just gigging and has got a real sensitivity for the way the other instruments are playing. So, anyhow, thank you so much, Richard. Thank you to everybody who contributed a score to this group. This is a very special, very bright, gleaming group of entries, and like I said before, there is no favoritism here. There is no sense of me putting one score that I like better than another in another group or whatever. This is just the 6 scores in a row that were submitted at the same time. Okay? So really, really liked all of these arrangements. In fact, I haven't been disappointed so far from all the dozens that I've looked at over the past few days. And really looking forward to having my imagination stirred at just the possibilities of arranging for this piece. So thank you all, and I will see you again soon for Group D.